Welcome back to the 40% Better podcast, where we talk about all things leadership, specifically software team leadership. And Brent has graciously accepted our invitation to come here today and talk with us about his experience. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bill. Great to be with you.
Yeah. So the one scripted question that I ask everybody, it's always the same, is how did you get started in leadership? Was it like organizing baseball teams when you were a kid, or you were 30 and somebody threw you into it? Like, how did that play out?
Yeah, I was more in the vein of kind of being thrown into it, to be honest.
Oh, nice.
I've had the fortunate opportunity, actually, in my career, in this career, to work only for 3 companies, if you can believe that. So it's probably pretty rare, I would think, these days in this industry, software development, engineering services, that sort of thing. And really, the leadership opportunity really didn't present itself to me until this company that I'm on now, and just kind of coming up through the ranks and being thrown into opportunities, and hopefully, in most cases, taking advantage of that. Obviously, making my own mistakes along the way as well. But yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. So the first team that you ran, when they said, here, like, how did that all play out, and what kind of prep did they do in advance?
Yeah, great question. So the real leadership opportunity that I had was a sort of a small development team, and it was actually soon after I joined this company. We're a services company, so we do software development, cloud modernization, and all those kinds of things for clients. This was a particularly important client for us at the time, and actually that's one of the reasons I was attracted to this company is the ability to work with important clients, not only to the company but to our nation, and in many ways. So this was this client fell in that category. I was part of a small dev team, so we came on very aggressive schedule for implementing features, shipping stuff, all that. And I was brought in as like a senior software developer. And about maybe 4 months into that project, our lead had an opportunity to go abroad, actually, and do some work on some somewhat related but more personal career development things. So he wanted to take that opportunity, and that took him actually to China. And it was funny that the client that I was working for at the time, there was the inability for that guy to continue working on the project that I was on, just because of his travel to China, if you can imagine that. So this guy wanted to take the opportunity. At the time, our practice manager looked around and said, "Okay, who could do this?" He saw me up and running with the team, and at that time, I came on and became essentially like the technical lead and project manager of that small development team, and that was my first shot. So it was really just a fortunate opportunity of this guy having a great opportunity and going and furthering his career and experiences and all that stuff, and me being in what I guess is the right place at the right time.
It's always, yeah, that's right place, right time is always the way it is, I think.
Hopefully you make some of your own luck along the way too. But
yeah. Well, clearly you had to be doing something effectively for whoever the decision maker was to go, "Hey, Brent, do you want the gig?" So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the most important thing I was doing there was showing up every day, all night, that sort of stuff. So I was reliable at the least,
Yeah. Reliability is kind of a thing,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's especially when you're building things, whether it's software or you're building a house, you expect people to show up on a daily basis and make progress. So yeah, that totally makes sense.
And then, I guess the other thing that I had going for me was we were a pretty hardcore engineering team, and some of the folks on the team really, really were passionate and wanted to focus on the engineering side of building what we were building. That kind of left me by default as being sort of a conduit to communicate what we were doing, essentially. So I think that's the other thing that they picked up on the time, is that I could at least in some ways, communicate effectively about the progress that we were making, goals that we had, that sort of thing for the small team.
Yeah. Yeah. Communication is, in the engineering world, one of the things I've really noticed is how we don't think enough, or talk enough, do enough about helping software engineers communicate better. Like that just, when I started running teams, that was a thing I had to learn was how do I effectively communicate? And for specifically communicating as an engineer, it wasn't like there was a book I could just get that was like communication for software engineers,
Right.
That didn't exist. Maybe I should go write that book. But that was a thing. And so a lot of the research that I did around communication was actually sales stuff.
Yeah.
That because it was available, Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would I'm not going to sit here and pretend it was a natural thing for me either. It coming from that background, I think I had to learn some strategies to be effective in that way, and also, just as we all do, some strategies to deal with or the nerves and self-doubt of standing up in front of an important client and delivering some information and being right on point and not letting your nerves get you to say too much or too little or anything. And ultimately, like what I came to, Bill, was like, these nerves and the self-doubt that comes along with that early on. It really was like, I was like, I can't afford to do this. That's a luxury that I can't afford to have is this nerves and self-doubt. And so, at least in my mind at the time, I said, okay, you can't afford that. You have to push through it. You have to figure it out. And got some good help along the way, obviously from some mentors and things like that. But yeah.
Nice. Okay, so I got to ask, what did the mentors teach you to do, technique or skill wise, that helped you work through that?
Yeah, great question. And I'll say one of the things that I'm probably most grateful for along my journey, I don't know if you've experienced this yourself either, is on every stop I've had, I've been able to um, find someone that I admired something about what they were doing. Didn't have to be everything about what they were doing, but some behavior, some value ideal that they had that I myself wanted to model too. So I think like I've been lucky to be in situations along the way where I always had somebody like that I could say, oh, I like what this person's doing. Let me take something of what they're doing and try to model that myself. Ultimately, what it came down to for me is, some preparation as you're going about how you want to communicate what you want to say. And then also, the best advice I've probably ever gotten was like, hey, be concise, get to the point, be friendly and open, but you don't have to say too much. If you're coming across with an effective message that you've thought through, typically that will be enough. You don't have to do the you don't have to keep going, concise to the point, and that usually wins the day. So that was probably the best advice I got.
Yeah, I like that. The thing that stuck in my head, the advice that I got pretty early on was, if people have questions, they're going to ask you, especially when you're presenting to stakeholders. They're really comfortable asking questions. And if you only present a little bit, number one, you're saving them time, but number two, they will ask you.
Right.
Hey, give me that doesn't, tell me more. And
give some space to invite them in to ask those questions, and
yes,
becomes a better.
Yes. And I found that to be super helpful. The other thing that I did a lot was get subject matter experts from my team. Despite their discomfort, I would start to work them into little parts of a presentation just to help them. And it's small, time boxed. And some of them evolved into becoming super comfortable speakers, which I was really happy about.
Right. Yeah.
But because in my head, that was part of how I could help them with their career development.
Mm-hmm.
To get them into, oh yeah, this feature that I built, blah blah blah, and that was awesome.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, it sort of occurs to me that I probably had others do that for me to throw me in a little bit
Yeah.
and going. So
I had that happen. Yeah, one of the companies that I was at before I got comfortable doing presentations, my boss first of all had me building out a couple of slides for his deck, for his executive deck, around the stuff that my teams were doing. And then he wanted me to actually present it.
Right. Yeah.
And so I got that, the incremental exposure. And then he went on vacation and said, I'm out of town. You got to do the whole thing. Fortunately, he collected everything. He assembled the whole thing. I didn't have to build out the whole deck, but I had to go present it all. And he was like, practice, build out your notes, and nerves, as you're talking about. I definitely had that going on.
Right.
But because I'd had the experience of doing my part a few times before he went on vacation, it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
It's like, it's another increment. And so then it got to be pretty normal that he would just say, oh, here, Bill, just go and do this. And so I would. And yeah, it's that incremental thing was really good.
And
I need more incremental learning.
Great in the moment on that, but looking back, that's something that you're grateful for.
Oh yeah.
Someone like that had faith in you to pick up, do it.
Yeah, and my teams were doing really well, and they were, the stuff that they were working on was making the company most of its money.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's helpful too, right?
They wanted to know what the heck we were going to do next. Or there was a roadmap, and how far are you? What's going on, and are you kind of tracking to what we thought ballpark would be a timeline, or you got problems? So that was fun. That was a fun thing. Other kinds of skills you leverage in project management or team communication, like how do you get your people to be happy and having fun and enjoying the process?
Yeah, great thing there. I think what it comes down to for me is ultimately we have such a great group of engineers and consultants here that when I find that, you know, morale may be slightly taking a dip or something like that, it's typically because they're not challenged enough, or they're not enjoying, maybe things have gotten stale a little bit. And so sometimes that happens on longer running projects, or let's just say we need someone to come and do a job for us for a little while, and it may not be the most ideal from a technical perspective or whatever. But I think the one thing I learned also was you have to find, when that's the case, you have to find other ways to keep them engaged, challenged, and learning new things. Because you want to recruit and build very highly competent teams, but that comes along with the fact that your end of the bargain is holding up the end of like providing the work and opportunities to stretch the minds a little bit. And so I think for me that's been one lesson, is like you cannot for one day sit back and rest on, okay, he's good, she's good, they're making progress. I've found with I don't know if you found this as well, but with such highly competent folks that you work with, you have to find ways to keep the mind going a lot more. And so
right.
That's a lesson for me.
Yeah. I'm not sure how this will work for everybody, but the thing that I've done this after asking my team every time, but we always bite off more than we can chew. and sometimes it's a few times it's been a lot more. But I think that sense of challenge and, like you said, learning new things, and again, this might not apply to everybody, but the people that I've had on my teams have generally, they've liked that test. And I think if most of the team likes the test, the rest of the team is like, okay, we're doing this.
Right.
And they feed on the excitement of the rest of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and the flip side to it is I have to be responsible to make sure that they have all the support they could possibly use to feel confident about the challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It reminds me of, there was a book, I'm not going to be able to pull the title right now, but there was a book I read that the argument was, essentially people on your teams and people in life in general want a couple of basic things. One is secure connection to a group or like a team. They're part of the team. There's high trust, etc. And then as things go along, they also want to be recognized and want some status within that team as well.
Yep.
And I always try to keep those things in mind as well, especially for longer running organizations, teams, etc. Is that there's, it just comes down to, I think some basic psychology in all of us, which is we want connection to a group. And then within that group, we want to be continuing to build our status. And that doesn't mean doesn't mean the same thing to everyone.
Right. Yeah, I think the other piece that I think about often is intrinsic motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever we do one-on-ones, I'm always asking, so what else do you want to learn? And I don't care what their answer is, frankly, because wherever it is, I want to figure out a way to help them start going in that direction, assuming that everything else gets done with all our responsibilities are being met. Because if I'm thinking about how to help them advance their career, then they trust me more, number one, but also they're more excited,
right?
Even when they're doing the boring stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be excited. I want the fun projects to work on. Pure, self-interest here. But I also want the team to be excited about the project and their part in it.
Right.
And that, I think I always think about how do I make it feel like an adventure to them.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And
you ever like have to pull that response out of people, like in that one-on-one? Is it always there to say, okay, I got these 3 things I want to learn next, or whatever? You ever have to pull that out?
Sometimes it takes time, because one of the things that we've seen is that individual contributors don't trust leadership.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not that the leaders are bad, it's that we've been trained not to trust our leadership, because there's so many horror stories about bad leadership out there.
Mm-hmm.
And most folks, when they get leadership roles, they don't realize they're starting at a deficit, and they don't realize the impact on team performance and trust. And so when I inherit a team, the first thing that I'm working on is, how do I build trust? Mm-hmm. And usually that's, I'm being curious and I'm not telling them what to do. I'm not trying to be the smartest guy in the room.
Yep.
I'm definitely trying to be the most curious guy in the room, though.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, as they get more comfortable with me, then I'm asking them about, where do you want your career to go? What do you want to learn? And I don't care what the answer is. Like, I'm really clear. If I had a guy that early on moved from being a software engineer to being in sales, mm-hmm. from one of my teams. And inside our company. And I was totally like happy with that, right? Which everybody else thought it was the weirdest thing in the world that some guy who'd been writing code wanted to go, first of all, even experiment on being on a sales team. But I think it actually made him a better salesperson.
Yeah.
Because he knew what was going on behind the scenes.
He was grounded in everything.
Yeah. And so he could talk about things in a way that was a lot more educated. And not every prospect needs the technology details, but he just never got stuck saying, "Oh, I got to go talk to engineering and ask because I have no idea what you're talking about."
Right.
And it was a win for the company all the way around. And everybody since then has been a much smaller iteration. It's like I'm working on the back end and I want to work on the front end, or somebody's using a different programming language I want to learn, or I want to do more presentations, or whatever it is. I'm good. I'm totally happy to help that. And have them, again, intrinsically motivated to move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. I just ask them, what do you want to do next?
Yep.
And how can I help you to get there? And then just do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking back also to this theme of building trust, and we were talking about communication before. I think this may be an obvious point, but the other thing I've found that goes a long way in building trust with either the individual contributors you're talking about or others is that in times where it's not so perfect, like you don't have that situation that you were referring to earlier, where you're driving all the revenue for the company or whatever. There through projects, there are hard times and great times, right? But in the difficult times, it has been productive for me to also look at that as an opportunity to build trust with the team by staying right with the team, staying out front, being in some cases right there with the team to take the blame, the message, etc. So so that just occurred to me as well. It's like I think that's as important as anything, which is to not scram when things get tough.
Right.
Good thing, but
yeah. That's one of my early mentors. Was the founder of a startup that I worked at. He was really good, especially in the early days. He was there until we left the building.
Right. Yeah.
And some of those in those early days, sometimes that was 2:00 in the morning.
Yep.
And he was like getting dinner for us, and whatever it was we needed, he was happy to contribute. Sometimes we had him go do QA this thing and make sure it all works the way we think it should. And that was awesome. It was a great trust building thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had similar situations where I've looked up to someone who's done the same. I'm probably dating myself, but I worked in e-commerce.com boom. And it was essentially a startup environment at that time. We were working nights and weekends, and it was very fun because the challenges were difficult, but I was learning a lot. We had a culture where we were wearing shorts and flip-flops and all that stuff. The downside of that is that, depending on what was happening, there were chances where we'd miss paychecks and that sort of stuff. And right. And so there were two founders of that company, and one of them, both of them were great, but one of them was definitely in that same mode, which is there all the time, also missing out. If the employees had any threat to their paycheck, he was also right in that same boat. And so I always tried to, talking about what you can model from others. That was also one that I took a lot from him.
Yeah.
He handled that and stuck with it. Ended up, it worked. Things worked out great for them.
Yeah. I think that's one of those environments where you learn so much that you don't even realize that you're learning all this stuff. Yeah. And then it's funny because when I've gone to bigger companies, I can tell the people who have or haven't been at startups
Right. Yeah.
because they have no clue that they could learn all this stuff, and that, oh yeah, I'm a software engineer, but also I program all the routers.
You can do more, right? You
You're
can do
right,
more
right. You can do all,
in your
yeah,
job
yeah,
description. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, and I've helped the sales guys do demos and all that stuff. And I think people that start off at the big companies, they silo themselves into these little boxes because no one says, oh, by the way, learn all this other stuff, because one of these days we might be calling you
Yeah.
to come join us.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
grateful. I've had I'm grateful for having worked in that environment, but also I left that company and went to a huge system integrator,
Mhm.
huge company, and I did that because I thought, oh, the mission that they're trying to achieve is very important to me. You know, the clients that they work for, the work that they were doing, um, and that ended up proving true. Unfortunately, at that time, I found that probably inevitably, maybe I couldn't see it far enough or whatever. But at that time, I felt like such a small piece of a huge machine. So on the one hand, the first at the .com, I was part of a five person company to start with. So everybody shared almost every job, as you were describing before. Then I went to a huge one, and the the clients that we were serving was very important to me at the time. That was different from the first one, but I couldn't see a path to making a difference at that place. So eventually I moved on from there, having learned a lot in both situations actually. Like, as you said, the startup world teaches you a lot because you're doing a ton of different jobs. One day I was lead engineer. Another day I was helping out with sales. Sometimes I'd even do operations and that sort of stuff. And then I was very much in as you were saying before, the model of the job description in that big company. And part of what I learned there though was, with a lot of energy and focus, you can get really good at something. Uh,
Mhm.
and so I appreciated that perspective. There was a lot of things that you can learn also about just navigating within an organization like that, and how to um how to interact with people, very helpful people, difficult people, etc. That took, as frustrating as that can be at the time. I look back on that now, and I'm grateful for that experience as well. So yeah.
I like that you pulled lessons from the big, like you had the initiative to pull the lessons from the big one. It frustrates me when I meet people that are at, they've been at big companies and they haven't seen that. They haven't really thought through that self-education cycle,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is such a, I'm naturally very curious.
Yeah.
And so my default is this self-education, where, what, how can I learn, which opens doors and provides all kinds of career advantages.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always think that should be obvious to everybody. And I'm surprised when it's not, when they're waiting to be told exactly what to do.
Yeah.
Go and ask questions, do the research.
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes down to like leading with curiosity. Are you a curious person or not?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And then, the other thing in an environment like that I learned was, no matter all the stuff happening around you, may be frustrated. Oh, I'm getting there's a ceiling here, or I'm getting locked out of this conversation, or I can't. But on a day like that, when you're frustrated, I mean, I'm not sure I always held myself to the standard at the time, but I tried to, and that was, there's always something in that day that you can do to positively affect someone else's job, work environment, and you get double the rewards for that coming back, right?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I always lived up to that, but I tried to live. I tried to do that almost for a selfish reason, 'cause it made me
Right.
feel
Right.
good.
It's, and it totally makes sense, right? That and that's one of those enlightened self-interest moments
Mm,
where being selfish is actually really you're selfishly taking care of somebody else
Yeah.
because you know that in the long run you're going to feel better for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, I think of all the stuff that I've done to take care of people on my teams because selfishly I know that if I do that, they're going to be happier and more productive.
They are. Yeah.
And if they're more productive, then I've got more leverage with the executives to give them stuff.
Yep.
It's like that's always the win.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it's also like it's also interesting if you have that view to try to look around and see other people modeling that behavior and what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because if you look for it, it's there.
Right. Right.
Maybe not in everyone, but in a lot of cases. And can give you some good ideas about what you can do, but also like clues you into who's insightful enough to see that.
Right. Right. Yeah. When I was in college, I worked in a kind of high-end restaurant, and there was I kind of learned this from one of the waiters there because he was easily the most popular waiter from the guest's perspective. Mm-hmm. Like people would call him, like they would make reservations and say, "Oh, I want to be in Larry Pike's area of the restaurant," mm-hmm. all the time. And at the same time, and he was I want to say a little bit arrogant, but also he took great care of both his customers and whoever was working with him in that area. Right. I worked with him a bunch of times, and he was phenomenally, like, he made sure that everything he did allowed me to do my job. I was a busboy for him, allowed me to do my job to the best of my ability. And so he, despite, coming off, kind of not always as smooth as you might want, I loved working with him. And the clients clearly loved having him as their waiter. It was a really cool experience.
Yeah.
And he was I'm not sure if he built that persona, but he was incredibly effective at it. And yeah, it was very cool. It was a good role modeling. And I like that. Tell me about some other role models you've had, like things that you learned from them.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is cliche also, but I came from a very strong family where both my parents modeled sort of hard work and care for others, importance of family, all the things that you would think of as a great family. So I think both my mom and my dad, I think, are number one, 1 and 1A role models to me. And they were themselves. I don't think growing up they wouldn't have described themselves as poor or anything, but they came from a different time and a background that was, there was not a lot of money in either case. And so I think both of them were fairly driven. They also had strong families, but there just was not a lot of money. So they were fairly driven, I think, for education, but also just the core basic principle of hard work and care for others. That I think that you in some cases you may only get that perspective from having lived through what are not hard times, not super hard times. I don't want to make it sound like they came from nothing, because that wouldn't be giving enough credit to their family, but it was enough such that they were able to drive that. So I mean, to me, 1 and 1A to me are my mom and my dad for role models. I think they continued to live that all throughout their career and retirement and everything. So that I think in a weird way, to keep it to the family, I have 2 brothers that are younger than me, and watching those guys grow and mature into what they've become, also in a weird way, like I step back and I admire what they've done too. In many ways, I try to see like what's how they're a little bit different from me, how they look at life a little bit differently, but what they've been able to accomplish not only with their career but their families and personal lives as well. And so I don't know, maybe this is the theme. I'm kind of on the inward out role model. So both of my younger brothers, it's a kind of weird thing to say, but I look up to both of them in a weird way, or not, maybe not a weird way, but in a way. I think, and then like I said, along the way, at each of the major stops in my career, I've had folks to look up to, take something from, and in some cases to model more of their behavior than others. Like I had a boss at this current company who was the CTO of the company for a long time, and he just modeled like what you were saying, continued like relentless curiosity, and hard work and drive, but also care for others and understanding for other people's situations. And one of the things that he taught me was, not everyone is motivated in the same way, and not everyone will have the same strengths. And so you have to understand the individual and then put them in the best situations to be successful. And of all the things besides the sort of the personal work ethic and what he achieved, that quality in him is what was, very impressive to me, which is sort of the empathy to see something from an individual's perspective, somebody that worked in some way worked for him somewhere down the line, and find out what their strengths are, what they wanted to do, and then put them in a situation to maximize those, as opposed to having to sort of square peg in a round hole, like get this done, we're going to grind on you till you get it done. Hopefully that makes some sense.
Yeah. The round peg goes in the round hole way easier.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's so smart to put the people to get people doing what they want to be doing. It seems like it should be obvious, and yet I've certainly worked for folks that in the past where they didn't think that through.
No.
And it impacts the performance.
Exactly. Yeah. You obviously want to be providing feedback and helping people fill gaps that they may have and having them develop all the stuff that we talked about before. But also, if you don't build on the strengths, you're missing out on a huge opportunity there.
Yeah. It's so interesting to think about how there's these what people regularly talk about, these knobs and levers that you can adjust to help your team operate better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as you're saying, like, it's obvious, and
Right.
yet not everybody sees that, or if they do, they don't think about, oh, if I adjust this, the team can operate better. It's this interesting. I sometimes wonder if people think it's somebody else's job to go do, like it's the HR department's job to go figure that out. Mm-hmm. I see the knob, but I'm not going to touch it. And I'm like, no, it's your team. It's, like really your job. And yeah, it's such an interesting blind spot, I think, for people.
Yeah. The other one that comes to mind, you're asking about mentors and what they taught me and things like that. I had one along the way, working pretty closely with, recognized potential in me, asked a lot of me, and was there as like a sounding board when I was frustrated about something, or this team member wasn't whatever. And it was always like sort of in a good objective view of things and feedback, and was not scared to also provide me feedback like, you're overthinking this, or you're too frustrated about this, or whatever, right? And I remember one time he said something to me that was very funny, and he said, when you're driving your car, have you ever noticed that everyone that's going slower than you is an idiot, right? But everyone that's driving faster than you is a complete maniac. So what does that tell you about you? And in the theme of like providing open, honest feedback, that was a good thing for me to hear at that time. Like, hey, maybe it's not always like somebody else is doing something wrong, or you should be frustrated about this because they're not they're not working as many hours, or they're working too much, they're doing the wrong things or whatever. Like maybe a little bit of reflection would be good,
Right. Yeah. I think, are you guys agile
We are.
or Kanban or something like that? Yeah. One of the things that I always try to do is make sure that, number one, people are working on the kinds of tasks that they really want to be working on.
Yeah.
We don't give the front end people database tasks because it's completely not their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is to try and make them as atomic as, like, if possible, I want a bunch of 1 and 2 point tasks, because it means we know exactly what we're doing.
You can break them all the way down. Yep.
Yeah, and it's super predictable. It's not always possible, but still, that's one of those. Everybody knows what everybody else is doing. There's no surprises, and even though it's more work to break it down up front, it's, in the long run, I think the team runs faster.
Yeah.
Because they look at it and they're like, oh, it'll take me, like, it's 1 point, but really it's going to take me 5 minutes. And then they're done, and we're flying. It's kind of that prep work, and then everybody's going at the exact same speed. We don't have, the other thing that I've tried really hard to do is, as much as possible, get people to be in flow while they're working. And then when you aren't easily able to stay in flow, you're done. Because I have yet to find a good way. Like, there's some thing in our brains that once you can't get back into flow state in the course of a day, like, just stop.
Right.
And go do something, like, go home, or if you are home, go outside and play with your kids. Like, but, don't be working anymore. Because when they're in flow, they're so much more productive.
Yes.
And
so the best thing you can do is step away if you're not in the right state.
Yeah, and just because I want that consistent high performance, I know you can only do it for a small window, relatively speaking. There was some research that I saw that after, I want to say 6 hours, error rates and bug rates start going up in code, and after 8, it's like your bug rate just exponentially explodes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want bugs, like, because it's a waste of time, right? So I'm like, if you only work 5 hours, but you're bug free, I'm totally happy with that.
You're probably saving an extra 5 hours on the back.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, really, like, if you get your 3 tasks done for today, it only takes 5 hours, then go do something else,
Yeah.
And I think that's another one of those trust things, right? Is I trust that stuff's going to happen, and they trust that I'm going to be okay if they do their 3 tasks and then, go to the swimming pool or whatever, go play in the snow. I don't care what it is. Just don't be staring at your screen anymore.
Yeah.
And that's
I like that. I actually think this is an area of improvement that I could make for our teams, which is, to help minimize distraction,
right,
for our team members, such that they can keep the right state of mind as you're describing. I think there's at least for portions of our company and our teams, there's a lot of stuff being thrown around. There's a lot of demands on their time, and I think I do hear our team members consistently talking about, like, the need to context switch too often, and that sort of thing. And so, I think this is one thing that I'm trying to improve for our company actually is the ability to minimize the number of contexts that any one individual is working on in an 8-hour period or something like
Right.
that. I'm not sure I've achieved that yet, but that seems to be, to me, it seems like an important job of leadership too, is to I mean, there's obviously accountability on the individual to do that well, but as in leadership, I think you have some accountability there too.
Right. Yeah, and it's figuring out like I'm very what's the word I want? Not everybody on the team needs to be in every meeting all the time.
Yeah.
And so figuring out with the team, like who proactively really wants to be in the meeting because there's some knowledge they want to get or something they want to contribute to the outcome of the meeting.
Yeah.
And nobody else has to show up. And one of the companies that I went to when I inherited a team, one of the first things they talked about was how they all were going to all these meetings and none of them, like, they were all like, why do I have to go? It was kind of their broader question. And I was like, well, okay, how about if from now on nobody goes?
Right.
And then we'll try and figure out what we're missing because nobody's there. Like, I'll go to the meeting.
Yeah.
Because I'm the team lead. I'll go. And if there's something that I can't, like, I'll slack you if I can't answer a question somehow, or if I'm like, okay, hang on, let me get somebody and interrupt them and drag them in, or or we'll get the answer. Like, and the answer to the question is almost never that critical.
Right.
It's like, I'll go find out. I'll email you guys the answer later on to this one question. Yeah. It's just not that earth shattering. And all of a sudden they were like, oh, we don't have to go to these meetings. Like, that's a relief. We don't have to do the context switching you're talking about. And they get more work done and they're happier.
Yeah.
And
now I will point out there are those folks that like to be in every meeting because they just like to be involved and contribute.
Right.
And so part of the job there to me is also to clearly explain, hey, like, the reason that you're not in this meeting is because X, Y, and Z, or you're more valuable over here, that sort of stuff. And so
right.
I think in the majority of folks are like, yeah, more meetings, cut as many meetings out as we can. It's good. But I have run into that personality, that team member that are usually highly functioning, that want to be involved, want to hear things firsthand, want to be
sure.
towards it. And so sometimes they sort of self-select into a world of abstraction that you have to help manage as well.
Yeah. I think for that, it's figuring out how to get the value proposition aligned with the meetings they're doing.
Right.
Yeah. And hit the balance point. I think for me, that's been oh, okay, hang on. Like, I get that you want to be involved, and how does it help everybody else on the team?
Yeah.
What's the value prop? And at bigger companies, I have seen people at big companies that just did meetings all day long, and I cannot figure out for the life of me how that translated to value proposition for their, like, everybody thought they were real important because they were in every meeting we did. I was like, the critical thinking side of my head was going, what, what's the.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think there is that, like, that person is taking up the blocking and tackling, hopefully, for the rest of the team, such that, that they can continue to get their work done, and
yeah.
But
yeah, hopefully that's what's going on.
Maybe that's an optimistic view. But.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think what else are there any, like, really interesting stories from your life that you think would be inspirational, or a cautionary tale, or like, don't crash the server by load testing the production box, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I
which
think
I've done, by the way.
If you're in this business long enough, all of us kind of laugh about this with colleagues and stuff. We all have a story like that where we made, or the big mistake, or you're under pressure and do something that's very visible. And I don't know how interesting this is or whatever, but I, at one of the early positions I had at this company, we were building some software. We were highly visible. We had, at that time, we essentially had two environments we would deploy software to, or a test environment, and then it would make it up to prod. And don't tell me, like, those, I won't get into why there's only those two environments, but basically that was it. We had scripts that would run, that would repopulate data and that sort of stuff. So the night before our first production release, fairly elementary system, but we had some scripts that would run, and I wiped some data out on what was going to production. And so it was a correctable mistake if I stayed there all night and worked on it. So I ended up doing that. But it also required me to go and, my manager was good and strong, but was right there beside me, but was also saying, hey, you're going to go talk to him about what you did here and why there's a chance that we're delayed. And so it was very painful in the moment. It taught me about, having some courage and being forthright in that, because, I personally observed behavior where some people try to sweep some things under the rug, whatever, and it becomes more complication and issues down the line. Luckily,
Yeah.
I was, I made the right move in that case, I'll say. And then it taught me also about, even under pressure, people can be understanding and realistic if you're upfront and honest about what's going on. So I mean, that was the one that really stands out about a big mistake that I made. I think and many of us have those stories, wiping out a whole bunch of production data or something like that. And that was mine, and that really taught me about as honest and forthright as you can. And always, like, when like when you see these big breaches and things that happen, it's always the guys who take longer to disclose that cause more of a problem than the breach in the first place. So,
Right.
So a lesson in that, and then a lesson in grace from the other side with the person that I was explaining this to. Even under pressure, personal pressure, career pressure from them, this mistake that I made affected them and their credibility. Gracious enough to understand that people make mistakes, and ultimately wound up good, because I was as invested as ever in making sure that thing worked. It got out in production, and ultimately we crossed the finish line like we had hoped to do. So
Nice.
That's the one for me.
Yeah. It's funny. Somebody else that I was interviewing in the last couple of weeks made a comment about everybody has stories like that, and if they don't, they haven't been working in critical enough environments.
Right.
I one time, we only had, this was like before data centers were a thing. We had our server in our offices, back in the day, and I wanted to do some load testing, and so I wrote this script to do some load testing.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think through, like, it was running queries against a database. I didn't really think through, like, how bad it could get.
Right. Yeah.
And it it crashed the box. And so it was the production server, unfortunately, and I was like, oh no. And so you have to manually reboot the box, and it takes time to come up. However, and I was like, I apologized to everybody, I emailed the sales team and the company founder, everybody, like, oh my God, we've been down for 10 minutes and here's why. But the silver lining of that was the company founder immediately said, we need another server so we can have redundancy in another data center, in a data center, not just sitting there in our office.
Yeah.
And so 2 months later, I had a brand new shiny server halfway across the country.
Yeah.
And he was like, this was for him, he had never considered that we could crash the server like that. And so he was like, I'm not even pissed that you did it, because that was a huge lesson for me. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm, glad I could provide that.
I'll take the feeling for that for the yeah.
Yeah. But it was just, yeah, it's like you said, being upfront about it is such a, it's really the win,
Yeah.
it's like stuff's going to happen, stuff's going to break. And if it hasn't happened, it's like riding motorcycles. There's people who have fallen down on motorcycles, and there's people who are going to fall down on motorcycles. And if you haven't fallen down yet, you know which group you're in. Yeah. So this has been super cool. Anything else you think people should know about leading software teams?
Yeah, I mean, I just got a couple of things like I don't know if these are profound points or whatever, but I got a couple of things. One is just a tip to folks moving into leadership. One that I had to learn that really helped me out a lot, which was record your voice and listen to it and do it fairly regularly, so that you're in that practice of back-to-back communication talk. You're in the practice of delivering information, and then you have the added benefit of being able to listen to that and tweak it. So if you're a person that's doing presentations regularly or things like this or otherwise, get in the habit of recording your voice, your presentations, and listening to it and critiquing it. As painful as that can be, it's painful for me too, but it's been very helpful to me. I think the other one I wrote down ahead of this was, you're like, we talk a lot about communication, but really your behavior and what you do day to day is really the language that you communicate to the rest of your teams and organization as well. What you do speaks louder. This is a cliche, but speaks louder than any speech that you can give or presentation you can give day to day. Your team see you, and so really your behavior is your language to communicate to them. So those are the two I wanted to hit on for today that I try to live to. And as we said before on some of these things, I don't always live up to those, but I try to.
I like that. I like that. I think about behavior all the time. Like that's kind of the operating framework in the back of my head. And that the practice communication, 100%. I have done presentations that I've recorded and then played back and like 30 times in a row because I really wanted to get it right.
Yeah.
That's part of my getting over my social anxiety journey was doing that. But then also, yeah, just the day-to-day behavior. And I think part of the benefit of that is that it's calming for your team.
Right.
Or not, like depending on how your behavior is.
Right. I guess
if you're calm and relaxed and creating a psychologically safe environment, then your team benefits, performance benefits, all that stuff is up indicators. Versus if you're not, and I think having the self-awareness to do that is just super helpful for your team. Yeah, that's a really good insight. Yeah, I like that. Cool. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.